Welcome to another Buzzslayers interview. Today we have Colin Wolf with Smooth Retsina Glow. Colin, how you doing, dude?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine.
Excellent. Again, thanks for coming on, man. This is really exciting because I really like that album that you guys put out. It's massive record, dude. I mean, hold on, before I get into that, you're a music educator, right? You're a teacher of some type. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm sort of split 50-50 between the teaching aspects of sides and the performing aspects. So ever since high school, I always did private lessons a little bit, and through college, I also did those on a on and off basis, like private lessons. And when I graduated from what's called Kutztown University over here in PA, we just call it KU just because it has a little more of a street sort of vibe to it. I started teaching for School of Rock in Easton. That was about a decade ago when I was still a student. And I sort of did like those subcontractor sort of roles. Is like an evening hustle. I taught more than I performed then. And, I think when Smooth Retsina Glow started, and funny enough, the lockdowns occurred, I sort of had to really change my lifestyle a little bit. So I then started working for a place called West End Music in Allentown, where I still am. And I'm also a building sub at Deer High School, where that's just like my day hustle. I just assist out where it's needed. Yeah. And it also gives me a little bit of a different slant as opposed to just doing the private teaching. Because as a subcontractor for a company, you can only go so far doing that until you either branch out or go on your own.
Yeah, you move on, yeah.
Even though I like where I am very much now. So the one thing about Smooth Retsina Glow is we have a lot of options as being able to customize the room. Like we can, if they say they want us to go duo, we can just do guitar and bass, guitar and vocals, or guitar and cajon. Or we can go the full band route like we did last night for our show. And so it usually just depends on what the club wants, and then the economics factor into the situation. And
so there
also the other thing is I wouldn't want to like burn everybody out just doing a club date, because club dates.
No, I get that.
But at the same time, like most club dates are going to be the same just about anywhere else, like in a standard 3-hour show. So it's just a matter of when you do call for the full band scenarios, it's at a place where the venue's right, and it's usually a place that gives us a chance to play the songs from our new record, which some songs are like meant to be played electrically, but I would say about 4 out of the 5 songs, because there's 10 songs, 8 songs can translate to the acoustic format pretty effectively.
And I bet I know those songs too, because I listened to the record like 3 or 4 times. But I do want to get into the record too, because it's got so much going on in terms of the kind of, it's like a combination of like, there's like, I feel like it's very classic rock influence, like super classic rock influence. And I know you're probably bored of hearing that, but for me, it was welcoming. It was like warm and welcoming. Some of the riffs and some of the way the songs are, but not everything's like that. And there's funk and there's jazz undertones, and the whole thing has, certain songs have these big, expansive, vast kind of undertones to them, which they almost are kind of cinematic in a weird way. Like there's a lot of, but then some of them are like rock, like heavier, crunchier rock bangers kind of a little bit, which I liked. And like the Relapse Collapse song, that's like a kind of a heavier song. And I listen, I love that. I enjoy.
That's a fun story about that one.
Well, I wanted to talk about certain tracks on the record too, and that was one of them, because I wanted to actually ask you, just straight up, is this a concept album, number one? And number two, it feels almost like it could be a concept album where it's laid out in chapters, but if it's not, where did this come from? Because the title track of the record, which by the way, if I probably haven't even said it yet in the interview, but the album's called Through the Needle's Eye. And the single, the title track on the record, Through the Needle's Eye, is very lyrically personal and a little existential kind of, and very because you're talking about a lot of stuff, and it's like kind of emotionally present as well. Like it's very driven off how you feel, and you just are able to articulate that into your words, which is something a musician could do that a lot of other people can't do. But can you talk to us about, how did this record come about, and am I on point with that little feedback, or am I way off of there on that track?
Oh no, you you clock it all pretty well, so you'll get a couple different answers. So number one, no, it's not a concept album. I guess you could say it's a thematic record, although I would say prog rock is a big part of my musical upbringing, like groups like King Crimson, Yes, Genesis, Jethro Tull, Rush, and acts like that. But I wouldn't say it's not necessarily a concept album, because like a concept album to me, for the most part, then again, considering that I think my favorite concept record of all time is Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick, in the sense that it just goes from one thing to the other.
Yeah.
And we haven't yet, and hopefully someday we will be able to do that if trends go one way or another.
Right.
But at the same time, I guess there is a bit of a thematic theme to the record, because when the album came about, the lineup that you heard for our album Metaphysical changed completely, and I don't want to get into reasons why necessarily, because it also involves things like the Lapse Collapse. We'll get to that a little bit.
Okay.
And I'll tell you exactly what that's all about.
I have a feeling about it. I have kind of an idea, but I don't. You
so
tell
the
me.
line about shoving it up your nose, doesn't that get away?
Yeah.
At least we didn't get like a explicit lyric thing on.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, you worked around that, but yeah.
Yeah, you got. I mean, hey, it's unfortunately a fact of life, as we all know in the music world.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the term "through the needle's eye" just came about. It was a phrase that I just had for a while, and I think it was a pun on like the biblical phrase "through the eye of the needle," where it's like you had to unload your possessions to get to a rite of passage, even though it's not like a secular record or anything like that. But I just thought that's an interesting idea, like to go to another plane of existentialism. You have to give up a lot in the process to achieve a certain form of equilibrium, which I think anyone can go through. And so after Metaphysical, we did an album called Gemini Rain, and the lineup then just fizzled out for whatever reason. My one bassist, or our bassist, Jacob Wolf, who I started the group with way back in 2019, had to take a leave because he had to pay off student loans, unfortunately. And
right.
We're still friends, but at the same time, we have a likely new bass player now, but I did send him the record, and I think he likes it, although I haven't heard back from him yet. And two of the other members just... it just didn't work out for one reason or another, and I don't have to get into that because it's just skeletons. And there were also a few other things in my own personal life in regards to work that even though we were gigging very hard, I kind of got a little too close to the flame, so to speak, in the terms of what I was doing with work and just performing out, and I wasn't really living necessarily the way in the most healthy ways. It's not like I'm doing like just pieces, but it was like there's not enough time for rest. There's not
healthy in your own not healthy in terms of how you normally are.
Just too much of a good thing. And even though performing's great, like it was just too much of a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, so even stuff like that, even though it's it's something that's incredibly creative and fulfilling for a lot of people, it still can be very energy consuming, dude. And that's the thing. And a lot of people don't realize that if they're not, musicians. But right now Jacob's kind of
let me get on to the rest of the story, because this is a good one. So I was basically reduced to having temps or sub musicians just fill out the roster while they're just gaps while we figured out what to do. Is somebody going to come back? And the first thing was, as soon as the last drummer that I worked with parted ways, it was like, okay, we got to get a new drummer. And my one friend, or actually two of the friends, suggested Quincy Willen. And I had to get him in a pinch. Didn't know him at all, but when we worked together, we actually found out we knew a lot of people in the music scene around the Lehigh Valley, as well as a couple friends of mine from high school, and a certain sort of musical similarity. And he actually learned the whole set from what we had last year, about a week's notice, and it just has continued from there. And So we started recording back in October of 23. We did Never Conform as our first song, and we did Fervor in December just to test the waters a little bit because it was still pretty uncertain what the future lineup was going to look like. And we had to participate in a benefit for my first guitar teacher, Matt Roman, in January of this year. It was just one of those things where musicians had to raise, proceeds for medical funds, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
But hey, it was an honor to get asked to be played for. Like, okay, sure, because it was sort of like a full circle sort of a situation. And just by happenstance there, we met our now singer, Natalie, who was just looking to do music. And we just so happened to have an opening, center of the tracks. And considering I had never known or worked or played with either of them at all through my life, it was a pretty unique blind date situation where it was like, okay, guys, this is a song I got. Let's see what we can do with it. And the one thread that was a constant from our last record was we recorded with this engineer named Matt Mulcahy, who is on the south side of Bethlehem. He runs a studio called Shard Sounds, and he actually had worked with Quincy beforehand, so there was some familiarity there. But it was a pretty unique blind date situation where
that was the only connection was right there.
Just music, and we all had fairly similar tastes. Like there is like you say, a certain classic rock era, but we're not doing Greg Van Fleet classic rock.
No, totally.
Sorry.
No, it's a very general. The term classic rock is a very generalized term. Yeah, I
mean, at least maybe over where you are, but in the Lehigh Valley, I'm just thinking of it's like your 70s and 60s middle-aged older musicians who are playing very stereotypical rock songs. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. It's a part of the tradition, but in the classic era, there are some things that the modern scene doesn't have and vice versa. We'll have to see assessed when the history is written, but at least maybe it's different over on the West Coast. But over here, when you tell me classic rock on the East Coast, I have a very well thought out idea of what I'm thinking.
Right. So let me step in right there with this one because I'm actually from the East Coast. I'm from New York myself. So and I grew up there. So when I think classic rock, I actually think of bands like Rush and bands like Yes. That's for me. That's what I and a lot of people again that's also progressive rock or prog rock is a lot of some of these bands are like the creators of prog rock. So it's so for me when I say classic rock, I'm not, I'm covering a very broad spectrum, you know what I mean? But I'm kind of like, that's where I didn't want you to think like, I'm talking about like whatever, I'm definitely talking about bands like Yes when I'm, and bands like Rush, one of my favorite bands of all time, oh my God, I grew up listening to this stuff on the radio. I'm 45 years old, just about. And I grew up in New York, and the classic rock stations, they all, I grew up listening to all the popular songs. I had, my mom had a Yes, my dad rather had a Yes record on vinyl, along with all tons of stuff. But when I say classic rock, that's kind of what I'm dipping into. And that kind of actually answers, what you mentioned earlier. It kind of answers some of my other questions as well in terms of your musical influences. I was going to ask, like, what kind of, so in terms of the band lineup right now, so because as far as I knew, I was getting things off the site for the time being, and I had Sarah and Jacob on there. And things like that. And so that's okay. That just isn't something that's going to be updated. Can I ask you a question? Let me ask you something.
Certainly.
Right. So, and this is just something that I'm probably wrong about because I wasn't there, obviously. But to me, a record like this, there's a very particular kind of energy that's captured on it. Was some of this recorded live?
It was all recorded live. It's not like Lockdown. We're not doing it. Live albums just feel better. And
I know
like you get the energy, and I know some people did Lockdown records very well. And some people say that we can make it sound live. You really can't. You can tell. I think you can tell when you record live.
I can tell. That's why I asked. Yeah.
It has that spontaneity, and no matter how good technology is going to get, you're never going to replicate it by recording it one bit at a time.
I like that you guys have, for certain tracks, there are elements of that vast, like I mentioned earlier, the undertones of some of the songs are kind of like, there's like there's notes that are like, there's things like almost like synth pads and things like that make, when I say cinematic, that's kind of what I mean. It makes things expansive, like when you listen to it with headphones on, you could pick up on more of that stuff. And this was a record, and the record before that you guys did. I listened to both of those with headphones. I like listening to records with headphones. It's yeah, exactly. And I've spent years. I've been an engineer, and we've done mastering for years. So listening with headphones obviously gives you a different portrayal than when you listen through speakers. And I could feel like you're someone I could talk to about something like this, because you obviously do a lot of it. But it's like, when I listen to the record with headphones, you can pick up on all the stuff floating through the ether of the songs, and that kind of gives you like a more of a lush vibe. And then and then you come in with like a Relapse Collapse type of song, you know what I mean? And it's cool. It's a great mix of it's a great mix of aesthetics that you guys that you put on the record. And so all right, so we covered that, you do the musical education, we covered kind of where the band's at now, and that you recorded it live. And that was my big one. And I'm so happy that I was right. And I knew it, because anyway, I digress. But yeah, so I was going to ask you that too. I was really going to ask you if, if you guys go in, you kind of answered this question too. If you write most of the stuff and then you bring it to the other people, or if you guys write together. I realize now that you write a lot of stuff. So you and the other vocalists, you guys are both singing on this record, right?
Yes. I think this is the first record where we actually got our voices to work perfectly well, because of the other two singers in the Glow, we just never really were able to develop our vocal sound for whatever reason. I don't know why. I don't even care to know why. But I think for this record, yeah, it's like whatever. It just didn't work. Even though, like, on some of the earlier records, I'm not talking about Metaphysical, which is the one thing I only sang just because we didn't have a singer at the time. And
right.
It's the one thing that we always were determined from the inception was, or at least I was we were going to have a dual vocalist band, or a group where there was more than one singer. And that, I would also say, harkens back to the classic era where you have groups like the Beatles, the band, CSN, and I'm trying to think, who are the other ones that come to mind? Fleetwood Mac from
big one.
And that's the one thing that I haven't always found in more contemporary bands. I'm sure that there are a few out there. Like, I think King Gizzard has a couple other songs where they change up the lead vocalist, but that always seemed to be more of a classic rock, if you will. Yeah, I'm still a work in progress vocally. Like, I mean, obviously I have more experience on guitar than I do vocal. And I think this is the first record that, as I listened back to it, I think I knew what keys worked best for my voice, or what registers. And, but that was also partially a product of limitation. It's like, if we have a different sort of vocalist, that will give my voice a chance to rest, B, give the audience a twist, and if Natalie starts singing all the hits in a year's time and we're on a more elevated platform, fine, whatever. It's just basically a matter of can this record get me to just do performing and writing exclusively. I mean, or to a certain extent, the private sort of music education I've always enjoyed, and I think I'll always be doing that in some way, shape, or form. Like Alex Testament is quite active on his True Fire courses and things like that. So, but that's definitely the sort of teaching aspect that I think will always be a sort of a fallback for me in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I mean, I agree with the fallback thing. I think that it's just a part of you too. I think you doing what you do. It's not just because you love performing, you love playing, but you also obviously love the theory factor of everything. You love the audio sound, factor of everything. Being able to kind of, it's fun being able to spread a certain kind of knowledge, and watch people. Like if you're teaching guitar, for example, right? And you're teaching someone guitar and then they come back and they've learned the thing that you taught them and they go, look, I can do it now. that's like you're helping someone else progress in something that they're in love with doing, unless it's like, they're a little kid and their parents made them do it or something like that. But if it's a guitar, that's a rarity. If it's that's like more like trumpet and stuff like that. When it's guitar, it's usually because whoever it is, kid, teenager, adult, they really want to play guitar, like they want to learn to play guitar. So it's a passion already, whether it doesn't matter how good or bad they are at it yet. It's something they want to do in their heart. They want to pick up the guitar and they want to learn this, or they want to rock out or whatever. And you're helping them, teach them the knowledge of how to do that, teach them a skill and watch them progress at that. That's got to feel good, dude. But, I also wanted to ask, so are you guys, again, I'm not sure if it's current for this year, but you got, oh wait, of course, you played a show last night, you said, so you do have shows upcoming. I think, at least five shows coming up, right?
For this year, we have 2 more dates to fill.
And in January,
we got to do a New Year's Eve date, but January is almost all filled up. And besides, up here for winter, we'll see, about the Thursday sort of deals, because everything is always changing. Unfortunately, venues close, or they have new in management. And as much as I like the adage of one door closed, another one opens, it's a matter of trying to find that new door. As you can. So it's you can look on it from that way of things, but at the same time, don't dawdle and create the moment.
Yeah.
So this year, in the areas we can control, I think we've done better than we could have expected, considering it was just really me and Quincy at the beginning of the year. And now we have our co-singer, and we are likely to have our full-time bassist finally, because that was, funny enough, the toughest ones to replace. And we had 3 guys that we kind of alternated in between. Some were better than others. They all had things that they brought to the table.
For bass?
But yeah.
Okay.
But one was kind of like a multi-instrumentalist sort of deal. And occasionally, when the situation is right, I suppose we can call on them. But it's going to be there's going to be more of a continuity now that it's the 4 of us, or that you'll have 1 or 2 people with me for the trio or duo situations moving ahead.
Right.
So that will add to the continuity, that's not just yours truly and his hired gun. It's actually a smooth Retsina glow in a band sense. And I think this album is a band record in the sense that everybody brings their own unique abilities. And I think each ability is amplified to the forefront.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah. I agree.
Best attributes, you've got Quincy's best attributes in his drumming, and you have Natalie's best efforts in her vocal abilities. So, and there's also a lot of arrangement when I bring the song in, they've modified it a little bit, or they change it up in certain ways. And that is the one thing about SRGs, even though I do write the songs, we have a lot of input that goes into the arrangement of it and how things. And that is something that I didn't always find with the previous lineups I worked with, in terms of
creativity and
it could just also be musical compatibility in some way.
That's true.
It's if you give somebody one piece of music, if it's not to their liking, they might not react to it a certain way. Or if you give somebody the right sort of music, they just might be like, oh, I'll know how to put my spin on this, or what to add here or there. And,
but you're also the right guy for it, though, because, you could, sometimes you get into the band situation where you're handed something and they go, cool, okay, well, I'm just going to try it like this. And then the guy goes, no, that's not how I wrote it. I need you to play it exactly. So it doesn't seem like you're really that kind of guy. Maybe it's a 50-50 thing. Certain situations you're like, all right, well, I had, and it's not like an aggressive. It's just like, oh, well, I kind of had this as, kind of the hook of the song. So I kind of really want that part to be that way, if that's cool or whatever. But when you have people, you definitely the kind of dude where, it would seem to me that you have the idea that is there and you want to express certain aspects of it are kind of set in stone in a certain way, but you let people run with them. And then the song kind of evolves a little bit. And that to me is when you say Smooth Retsina Glow as a band, that's the click right there. If you find people that you can click with in that manner, that can that can take what you're doing and keep keep the vibe that you want, keep the aesthetic, and keep the things that you want about the song, and then kind of also roll with it a little bit and say, what if I try this? And you guys start flowing together, and the song evolves a little bit after that. And in the end, you go, wow, that was actually really cool. I don't know if I would have done that by myself. I'm actually really glad. So seems like that's the situation here that's going on now. So that's good. I'm glad that you're in that sitch.
I occasionally might say, okay, this song's going to be in 7, this section is going to be in 5 or 11, but at the same time, or this might have a certain sort of rhythmic sensibility, but I always make sure that the other guys are invited to come up with whatever contribution they can make. So it's like we might change the feel a little bit in rehearsal, or might do a slightly different or completely different rhythmic feel, and that's fine by me because it's just enhances the possibilities, and it makes me happy. And I also think by the album sound, he knows how to make each song different in its own unique way, which is something you don't always find in modern music to a certain extent, even though I would say it is there still, but you just have to dig way underground beyond.
You got to work for it. You got to work way hard for it sometimes, but other times when you're in a situation
for your art,
Yeah, well, yeah. But sometimes, like you're saying, is that the whole point is that if you're working with the right people, sometimes it's more of a natural thing. You don't have to dig so hard to find it, and that's kind of a beautiful thing. So, if this ends up, if the basis stays, if everything is sticking to what's going on, what's next?
Well, 2025 is already booking up quickly. Like I said, our vocalist Natalie also has a few West Coast connections, so we definitely want to get on the road soon. I think summer 25 would be great to set up a couple of dates, and it's just a matter of lining those up a little bit. But we have also begun recording tracks as of last week. We got 2 things laid down, and you can be rest assured that now that we have the full lineup in place, because I think we are definitely a quartet sort of group. It's like a power trio with a singer like The Who, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and groups like that. It's going to make sense to try to cater to the strengths of the group. And the heavier songs, there'll be definitely overdriven elements to the record, but it won't be like I don't want to say metal is the right word, but it won't be as like overdriven as some of the other things were, because you learn things about what you enjoy tonality wise or amplification wise through the years, and it's sort of best to be able to play to our strengths as a group, because like when we're going out the places that we're playing at in Lehigh Valley, it's like if you do one thing that's like too discordant or too fuzzy or whatever, it's not going to really jive as well as opposed to when you have a certain sort of continuity. Like some aspects of the guitar sound might be a little more overdriven than others.
Right. Well, couldn't you just pick the songs you're going to play though? Like if you were in front of that kind of crowd, couldn't you just say, okay, well, we're not going to play Relapse Collapse. We're going to,
no.
Yeah.
That one, I mean, it's actually a good album highlight, but we did that in 11 takes basically, and at least the song was short. Like we were just doing that for ages, it seems. It was probably like 45 minutes, but it was like the longest 45 minutes where it's like, okay, let's do it again. And occasionally like either I'd screw it up or Quincy would screw it up, and it's like, okay, one more time. And
see, that's funny to me. That's funny to me as the listener to know that fact. It's such a cool to me, that's like a really cool piece of background info for me, because I really enjoyed the record. And like a song like that, in my mind, not being I play guitar and stuff, but I would think that would be one of the last songs that would take 45 minutes to do in comparison to some of the other songs that have so much more going on.
Yeah, it's just a weird continuity with how things. I think it was like when we were talking about music, because Quincy's dad is also a very accomplished drummer in his own right, and occasionally, because Quincy is fulfilling his final obligations in the Marine Reserves, and that happened when we met him.
Right.
And occasionally he has to be away for the weekend, but he's only got a few more months, even though His dad's a very good fit, but I think I remember him talking about how one of his favorite groups was System of a Down back in the day. Because like Quincy's a little bit younger than me, he's late 20s, I'm early 30s, so I figured I haven't listened to this band in a while, and I still want to maintain a certain sort of heavier aspect. So I listen. It was like one of the things where I went back and I listened through like all of System of a Down's discography, and to a certain extent, it has a certain influence from it.
Yeah.
I would, and it's just one of those things, you know.
I think it added a cool.
Not really fits in with our whole like live aesthetic. Like when we play live, we'll do. I'm thinking off the top of my head because right now we're only playing songs from this record. So the new record, although occasionally we might throw in an older song like we did for Music Fest just to make it like a best of eras sort of
bigger set
situation. And a typical full set for us will comprise of Against Any Odds, Never Conform, Lockstep, Maylene, Virtuality.
Virtuality is awesome.
Embrace. Thank you. After all of this, and yeah, basically.
You don't play through the Needle's Eye?
You do occasionally.
Okay.
For the right venue, like we're going to be playing at this place called Pearly Bakers tonight in Easton, where we have a monthly residency. Basically, it's that and the Grog House are our two big epicenters. Like we've got monthly things or every other monthly, and they're receptive to original music because we also have to throw in a lot of different covers, which is fine. You know, we'll do. And like depending on what sort of crowd, like we'll have a classic rock crowd, or we'll have like a slightly more balanced thing where we have a few more contemporary songs.
Yeah.
And so it just really depends on what the crowd is there for.
Yeah. No, totally.
Also, I think, you know, once I change my amplification setup a little bit more, because eventually like you become aware of what's a more appropriate sort of sound for you.
Yeah.
Something like Through the Needle's Eye or Relapse Collapse might be more appropriate to play because it really has to deal with how I recorded that and how my own preferences of amplification and tone have evolved.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not like one of those guys who, you know, goes on the gear channels and then he has to buy the most thing in vogue because a lot of the times when I have done things like that, it is sort of like, you now got to get a PA, like if you use a modeler.
Oh, yeah.
Like, or so it's like you get one thing, you plug it in, and you realize you have to get a whole nother system to get its proper.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I know how that stuff works. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Like if you get a certain sort of pedal, it's like great. You just plug it in, it does what it does, and modeling has certainly come a long way. But then it's like, okay, you're not plugging into an amp now, you're plugging into a PA, so you got to get a new mixer now, and it's like,
yep.
Because the one thing about
it's a never-ending stream of connections that have to.
It's just a never-ending like spiral of okay, you gotta get this. And I should say that most of the record for Through the Needle's Eye, I recorded it with a quad Cortex, and I sort of alternated between that and my Mesa Mark V, which for your guitar heads is. It's like I just bought it because I had a mini dual rectifier that was gifted to me many years ago.
I know that one, yeah.
And that was actually came at a time that I needed an amplifier because I had a Black Star, which probably weighed even more than I did, and it fizzled out.
Yeah.
The other thing is in the what's the word? I guess going back to the classic days, the one thing is like you ever notice how the floor of the guitarist is so clear compared to how it is now? Like you watch the Midnight Special, and I'm just thinking, wow, there's hardly
nothing there.
Yeah.
And now, yeah. And now it's like it's like a piano underneath them. Yeah,
it's like you can trigger the Enterprise from with a like that board in front of you. It's like okay, I love sounds. Some of my favorite artists have those like NASA triggering devices, but occasionally,
go ahead.
It's like guitar players are so much like, oh, this box will turn something on, and then you listen to it, and it's like I'm not really hearing this.
Yeah.
And in a live setting, like if you can't hear the difference, the audience sure isn't going to tell the difference. They'll be able to tell, like if you've got like a modulation sound,
Oh yeah.
certain sort of like a shimmer sound, like I have an Eventide H90 that does a lot of different things like that, which is basically doing the effects when I want it to.
Yeah.
But that's basically just a very streamlined setup. Like I've gone back to my Mesa. I'll probably get like a Friedman as like my backup for my Christmas present to myself.
Ah, there you go. That's cool.
Because it's a 1-channel amp, and I've only recently found out that back in the day we didn't have a foot switch for amplifiers. It's just you went full up and you turned your volume down.
Yeah.
And that's your clean sound.
Right.
And that was appealing to me because it's like one less foot switch, one less cable out to my board, which is literally not this wide now.
Well, here's the thing.
It's one less thing I can trip over.
Yeah. Oh, I know a lot. I've got a lot of, friends and people that I know in bands, of course. And, the one thing I've learned is that when you come across the guitarist that's got the big pedal board that's got like one pedal board that's got like 6-7 things, and then he's got another, and there's like a pog, and there's like a looper, and there's like 3 different choruses, and there's like 2 different reverbs, and there's a fuzz tone, and there's a big fuzz, and there's a metal zone, like you see all the stuff connected. What I've learned from just witnessing this is that it is, and I don't mean this in a bad way, because it's creative, it's an addiction. Trust me, it's an addiction. When you find those guitars that do that, it's an addiction, dude. And they just keep building and building and building and building and building and building until the end, where it's like, okay, well, I've got this gigantic, thing set up, but that's just how it is for some people. Let them do it. Look, for some people it works, for some people it doesn't. And I agree with you. The audience can hear the difference. They might not be able to know what it is or put their finger on what it is, but they will know there's something different in there. You know what I mean? So,
or when the guitar player is like, it's almost they become so entrenched in it that they're not letting the guitar do its thing. Like you can do a lot with your tone knobs, you can do a lot with your pickup selector. They're there for a reason.
Oh yeah.
And it's like they get so introspective into what they think their own sound is live that they're not able to perform to their highest ability.
Yeah.
With something like the Eventide, like for the song Fervor, that's another song that has been one of our highlights that we can do with every show, acoustically or electrically.
That's cool.
Use an Electro Harmonics microsynthesizer. So it's like that. And this was like the big box era EHX before Mike Matthews shrunk it down and whatever. But it's just basically like a fuzzy sort of drive, which like with a bit of a synth aesthetic, but it's not like I'm going to be chasing my tails thinking I must have from the Eventide patch site EH micro synth. Like I can just use like one of my guitar synth sounds that I have on my Eventide and I'll get through the set fine. Nobody's going to tell the difference.
Yeah, exactly. Roll with what? Yeah, exactly.
Roll with what you have, because when you're performing live, it's just about, you have to make the statement, and you also have to make sure that you look like you're having fun, and you can't care about if you're doing something a little bit different than the record, because that's, even though like parts of the elements of our music are scripted, there's a certain amount of interplay, or there's a certain amount of ad-libbing that goes into
a little bit of improv. Yeah, exactly.
Like there might be some phrases that I'll carry over from the solo, but I will
a certain percentage of it is
it just depends. We're not at the point where we must play the solo exactly on the record.
You're not Metallica, right? Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, give him credit, because Kirk owns Greenie, and or the other thing is who was it? Like Brian May is a perfect example of somebody who writes solos within the songs.
Oh yeah.
And look at the result.
The solo is the same. Yeah.
So maybe that could be something for a future endeavor, where it's like I think of a very compositional approach to a solo, which the one thing I kind of did was with Never Conform to a certain extent. And because even though improvisation's good, and that's a little bit where the jazz background from another lifetime ago comes out to a certain extent, it's you can't just go blitzing out like whole tone phrases or whatever.
Yeah,
You
yeah, but
drive the audience away, and
we're talking about how that translates to a live setting. Even if it's we record it a certain way, it doesn't mean you're not going to play the exact, unless it's a particular phrase, like you said, it's the particular phrase of the solo can stick live. But then the rest of it's kind of So, all right, Colin. Well, listen. Thank you so much.
Really great talking,
dude. I really appreciate it. The album again is Through the Needle's Eye, Smooth Retsina Glow. It's already out right now. As far as we could tell, you're saying hopefully we can expect some more stuff sometime. You guys are working on new songs already. This is awesome.
We got I think around Valentine's Day or St. Patty's Day, we'll have a new single and video ready.
Beautiful.
We just gotta keep it going, because this album really has made a bit of a statement, and the good thing is I think it still has a lot of mileage left in it, despite the fact it's only 4 months old at this point, coming up on.
Yeah, no, it's got plenty of mileage in it.